Good morning and welcome back to Spid YouTube. This is the second part of the Netrunner VOD reviews for the second week of the ANZ League. Now I'm doing the runner, and just like last week, I'm changing my decks. I want to give a bit of context to why I have changed to this Seb list, but I have changed to this Seb list, and this isn't me, obviously. I'm not Experimental Data Core, I'm Spids from Spids YouTube. But I did change to this Seb list, so I'm going to start with like a little story on why I picked this deck, but then I'll go over my thoughts on the deck. And I have changed one card from this list, but it's a card that Experimental Data Core said to change, so I'm just doing what they said. You can't blame me for it. But a little bit of history on sort of like last couple of weeks and months with Runner is that obviously in the first road review I was playing that flat deck, and last week I was doing the Phoenix deck, and I've been messing around with like what I want to do with Runner. Um, I do like messing around with different things, even though I've played this like Kakarembo deck for like the last month and a half. Before that, I was messing around with things basically every 2 weeks and month. I think messing around with stuff when you're new to a game is really good to get a grounding on how every identity works. What are the strong bits and the weak bits? What are you expecting? Like especially like more specifically in a game like Netrunner, what ice does each region have? What are their like strong suits? When they have low credits, what are they looking to do? When they have high credits, what are they looking to do? What sort of gameplay styles are you expecting? Not just for individual factions, but for matchups, right? Having played a lot of LOR, I think knowing matchup relationships is almost more important than knowing individual region characteristics, right? Like knowing how Demacia goes into Shadow Isles is almost more important than just understanding Demacia itself or Shadow Isles itself. And I will be talking about LOR just a little bit when talking about why I'm playing this deck. But my partner and I have been playing a lot of Netrunner recently, like just against each other, either practicing for APAC cons or picking decks we want or messing around with them. And he spent a lot of time on a Seb deck that looked very similar to this. Not maybe exactly this list, I don't actually remember, but I think probably exactly this list. And he had a lot of complaints. Every single time he was playing this deck, he was like, man, I think the Seb deck is really bad. I feel like I keep drawing with it, and I hate drawing with it. I hate feeling like I always have to draw for cards, and Transfer of Wealth is just such an awkward card, and everyone else this is HQ, and I can't get my Transfer of Wealth to do a fun thing. And there are just tons of complaints he had about really interesting bits about the deck. And I think those complaints are fine. He's allowed to have complaints about the deck. And so, he wants to play an Anarch thing. He's been testing around with different Anarch ideas, but he didn't like the Seb list for a couple of reasons. And every time he said it, it made sense to me, right? Issues with how Transfer of Wealth works, issues with how Audrey feels, issues with like feeling as if it's too reliant on certain cards, or not liking like the way Largo works, or stuff like this. But he said a sentence to me one day when we were discussing this, when I was saying, "Yep, I'm not playing the Phoenix deck anymore." He made some sort of comment about Seb, which was something like, "When I'll get hands that I don't know what to do with, and they feel, I don't know if clunky is the right word, but like it's not obvious what you're trying to do with it." Honestly, I'm butchering whatever quote he had entirely. I'm never going to remember the quote because it was just an innocuous comment made in a vast expanse of random comments made in the ether of the world. But the comment he made was a very similar comment he made about an LOR deck called Red Gwen. And he also didn't enjoy Red Gwen for the same reason he didn't like Seb. He just felt like there were hands that he didn't know what to do with. He didn't know like how to feel powerful with it. But he definitely made a comparison both explicitly to Red Gwen, like he said it feels like how I felt when playing Red Gwen. Then he also said the same sentence he said with Red Gwen, which was this thing about an awkward hand. The issue for me, and I suppose it's not an issue, it's just like a funny comment, is that Red Gwen is like my favorite deck of LOR. Like Red Gwen, if I could only play Red Gwen for the rest of my life in any card game, and I just consistently play different variants of Red Gwen, I would be the happiest person in the world. Because Red Gwen was like the pinnacle of what I liked. Like when I was playing LOR, Red Gwen probably exemplifies everything I loved about LOR to the highest degree. Especially what I liked about it. Maybe not what I thought was best about LOR. I think like Siv Rakshan might simplify what or exemplify what I think is best about LOR. But Red Gwen was what I fucked with most, as the kids say. And so he's trying to give you this complaint about like, oh, I hate Seb. Seb is not fun to play. I can't feel like I'm doing anything with Seb. And all I'm hearing is like, it's this game's version of Red Gwen. So I was very, very, very curious about playing Seb. Now, I don't think it plays like Red Gwen in any way, shape, or form, because nothing in Netrunner plays like anything in LOR, because as I've said for a while, or I said in the very first order review where I explained my history with the game, Netrunner is not a game with units and health and a nexus with 20 that you need to deplete to 0 and mana that increases by 1 every turn and all this sort of stuff. Like, there is no comparison. There's not a thing that can map on easily, except very vague notions of, like, tempo, or maybe beatdown, or control, or, like... tempo is just the main one, right? Now, importantly, tempo is like the main thing that Red Gwen was doing, and Seb is obviously very interested in tempo, as I have discovered while playing it a lot, right? The idea of, like, you're going to be applying pressure in ways that force the opponent to do things, or you're gaining too much value, and you're playing for, like, really specifically highly good turns, at least with how I've been playing it. Feels good, and that is what tempo means to me, right? Tempo has a bunch of definitions that all mean different things to different people depending on the mindset you have, but to me, part of the definition of tempo is being able to say that I am doing something low and sort of mid on a couple of turns, either to set up or just to sort of play casually in order to make it so that my hand allows me to do something really powerful on a very specific turn, or be able to continually apply pressure such that the opponent always feels like they're on the back foot, but not because I'm just, like, having bigger numbers than them, but because I am playing things in such a way that forces them to continually make awkward decisions that makes them feel like they aren't ever doing what they want to do, right? Now, Transfer of Wealth is actually, like, the pinnacle of that card, to an extent. Now, Transfer of Wealth is just, like, an overly good card, right? It gives you money, prevents them from getting money, gets you to take a tag so you get to install a thing with Seb. That is, like, flatly good in a sense, but it's flatly good on axes that are a little bit different to the regular axes of just running and multi-accessing or something like that. That being said, this deck obviously does have that multi-access in Manuel plus having a tag. But that's why I was curious in playing the deck, and it came at a perfect time where, you know, I've played a lot of Shaper, right? I brought Shaper to the 2 main tournaments I went to. I've played a fair bit of Crim, and Crim is very fun and simple to play. And I haven't played a lot of Anarch, and the Anarch that I have played has felt really bad. So this fit that perfect niche of, I'm still experimenting with new stuff. This deck is supposed to feel like Red Gwen, or at least the same things that my partner didn't like about Red Gwen. He didn't like about this, and the same things that he didn't like about Red Gwen, I liked about Red Gwen, because Red Gwen felt fun. And so that's a little bit of the rambly history for why I picked this deck. How does the deck work? Well, what's the sort of introduction to the deck? You've got to understand how Seb works. Seb says, if you have no tags and you take a tag, you can install a connection resource from your grip, paying 2 less. A bit of an abstract on how, like, I generally evaluate identities is I try and think of, like, what am I cheating out, right? With Lat, you're cheating out a click every turn, and that click is forced to be a draw click, right? With Egg, you're doing a very similar thing. You're cheating out draws every time you lose a card, or you do a net damage. With... That's another good example. Phoenix, you're cheating out gaining money, right? With Sable, you're, like, literally cheating out a click if you do a certain thing. Now, Seb doesn't cheat out clicks in a sense. Seb does cheat out clicks. You are installing a connection resource, but you're also cheating out, like, money, right? So you're able to play with low econ and not have to worry about as much econ because you're able to cheat out the econ, but isn't a specific package, right? This package is the package of resources that are also connections. These are your Araceris crews, your Error, your Friend of a Friend, your Hannahs, your Largos, your Manuels, and your Valentina Ferreira Carvalhols. I'm obviously not pronouncing any of that right, but nonetheless, I tried. These are mostly good cards, right? I think all of these cards are pretty decent. Maybe the worst card here might be Valentina, but that's only because it's an exception. Sorry, it's like a neutral card, so it's going to be working for everyone, which means it's not as likely to be uniquely specific to Seb, with the exception that I think this card was clearly meant for Seb because it's a tag-related card. But it's going to be lower power because it's trying to be more general. And these are good cards, and these are cards you want to be installing for cheaper, and you've got decent ways of giving yourself tags and applying tags, but everything is built around this idea of being able to give yourself a tag and messing around with tag stuff, or at least half the deck is. Half the, like, value efficient part is that you're messing around with tags, as opposed to, like, why would you play Seb instead of something else? Because you're doing this tag thing. As part of that, a lot of the tag stuff, such as, how do I put this? How do I put this to make it make sense and how I can come to understand it? I think the value of the sort of self-applying tags and being able to install something for cheap and for, like, a click less is that you can do these massive tempo plays. And as part of that, I think Audrey and Gourmand and the sort of trash something package is part of that. So Audrey lets you break things without having to spend money. Instead, you need to trash something in order to make it so that this thing can break subroutines in future, and you need to trash cards from your hand. If you're going to have a trash package, such as trashing cards from your hand, that means you're going to be on Steel Skin and probably Strike Fund, and Steel Skin says when you trash it, draw some cards, and Strike Fund is when you trash this, gain some money. So it's on this little package too. One thing it's on is Privileged Access, which is an easy way of getting yourself a tag and also to recur your programs and your resources. These resources might be Arisira's Crew, which lets you trash ice, and your programs are likely to be Gourmands, although they can be your Audrey. And that's like the main bit of the deck. Now it's on the price, which lets you install stuff for free and go through your deck even more, and it can also be trashing your Steel Skin and Strike Fund. The price letting you see 4 cards, you have to trash 3 of them, you get to install 1 of them for very cheap. All of this text is like why we are on Marrow, but you're on Marrow for the plus hand size, and it does a little bit of interesting stuff with sabotaging, but it's just there for the hand size, really. And I have felt good with the hand size. The hand size makes you feel like you're able to do those tempo plays really easily, right? If you've got a 7 hand size, not only are you more likely to have a resource in your hand when you're actually threatening them, like when you're able to do a good tempo play, you're more likely to have a resource that you can install with your tag, which you're going to be doing on all of your tempo play turns. Right? If you're doing a tempo play turn, you're probably getting yourself a tag so that you can install things when they're not expecting it, right? Like you take a tag and now all of a sudden you have a Hannah that they weren't expecting you to have, or you have a Manuel that you're able to double access in. It's on this Ashen Buffer Drive section. Buffer Drive is interesting in that it lets you put a card that you trashed back at the bottom. Because it's at the bottom and you don't have any way of shuffling your deck, this is less about like keeping cards you want. It is a little bit about keeping cards you want, but it's more about making so that you can continually put things in the trashing machine for even longer, right? So you get to put your Strike Funds and your Steel Skins back in the trashing machine, such that once you've activated Buffer Drive 10 times, you'll actually be able to get to your Steel Skin again and be able to use it again to beat net damage or to upgrade your Audrey. The other thing is that Buffer Drive has 2 bits of text. The top bit of text is put a card back in the bottom. The bottom bit of text is remove this hardware to add a card back to the top of your stack. This can be Ashen to shuffle your whole deck back in and to do this entire thing again. But there have been times where I should have put something like a Steel Skin on top so that I'm able to beat net damage. Right? Like, you can imagine Buffer Drive to put Steel Skin at the top, click to draw Steel Skin, run, Steel Skin gets active from the net damage that you have no other way of getting through because your Icebreakers don't always have the capacity to actually break subroutines. So if you're fighting a Sicentan, you might need to just get that Steel Skin back, and then you're able to run into Archives or whatever, or R&D and win the game. I have had a lot of fun with this deck, and I haven't explained every card, but I've explained all the ones that I think are really important. You've got your Solidarity Badge, which is a way to, when you trash things, you're able to get rid of a tag or draw a card. This is the sort of thing that glues the trash engine. Another thing that glues the trash engine and the tag engine together is not just like the general vibe of tempo, but there's also like this very explicit synergy between trashing cards letting you remove tags. So as I said, I do like this deck. I think the more and more I play with it, the more and more I can see how everything interlocks in a fun and rewarding way that I very much vibe with. And while it doesn't feel like Red Gwen, because Red Gwen was very much about a very specific thing for how I played it, with like the Reckoners and Hallowed and all that sort of stuff, I do see at least a little bit of the sense that you do nothing for like a couple of turns, and then you have a tempo spike and a tempo spike for 2 turns in a row, and then you do nothing, or at least that's one legal game plan, right? You can also go into another legal game plan of just consistently applying pressure. So there's a lot of things that I do like about this deck, and I've enjoyed it a lot, even if I'm not very good at it, because I'm still quite new, I feel, and I'm still learning like when I'm supposed to be doing things. It took me a while, for example, to realize that Friend of a Friend should be used for its second text, which is use a click and trash me in order to gain 9 and gain a tag, then for the first bit to remove a tag. Because when I was initially playing, I was like, well, I gotta make sure I'm always at 0 tags so that I can get to 1 tag. And that's fine, like that's something you need to be doing. But it took me a while to realize that the fact that Friend of a Friend gives you 4 extra bucks when you take a tag, you sort of need to be using Friend of the Friend as one of your main money-making ways. Like if you look at money-making ways, you've only really got Sure Gamble, Transfer of Wealth, and Friend of a Friend. And like Strike Fund, kind of. So you need to be using Friend of a Friend as the way to get money, and that took a while for me to learn. And so there's going to be tons of things that I'm still learning about how you want to be playing through this deck. Now, I did say they're on Ashen, but there's a lot of text here. But one of the bits of text they say is, I might go up to 3 copies of the price. And one of my first experience with this deck was like, yeah, I want to be on 3 copies of the price. So I was running through this and I was like, man, what do they recommend you get rid of? And then they say, you could probably cut Ashen Epilogue if you want to optimize the deck ever so slightly. So the one change I've made is minus Ashen plus the price. Now that's a bit strange because the point of the Ashen is that, give me a sec. Part of the Ashen is that you get to go through your deck more and more, and price needs you to be able to go through your deck more and more. So I'm sort of adding a card that Ashen is trying to be able to alleviate the issue of, which is a little bit funny. But I've played like 4 games with this change, and that's fine. There's a couple other changes they recommend. Like they think they want to take out Buzzsaw, and so it might be like -1 Buzzsaw, add the Ashen back in. With 2 more influence, there's almost certainly something else I could add, be it like, I don't know, a Stone Chip. I was thinking Cup. I was thinking Cupillation's another way of like accentuating the tempo aspects of the deck, right? I think Cupillation is 2 influence, I'm fairly certain. By fairly certain, I mean I'm fucking guessing it's either 2 or 3. There's an easy way to learn. If you just look up Cup, you can figure out if it's 2 or 3. It's 2, perfect, so I can put Cup in. And that might be what I do, right? I take out the Ashen, and I take out Buzzsaw, and I put in Cup. But then Buzzsaw plus Leech is like a really good way of getting through Scatterfield. It lets you get through things. I think like my experience with the Phoenix deck has taught me that even if an identity wants you to not play Icebreakers, you gotta just play the fucking Icebreakers, man. Give yourself that out. So yeah, that's a bit of a yap, but I think it's important for me to be able to express why I've been interested in playing this deck. But it's also not my deck, and I don't know how many changes I'm going to make to it until I feel like I actually can call it my own deck. Nonetheless, I'm going to quickly set up the VOD review bit. Whoop, and whoop. And I suppose whoop. There we go. Alright, so Seb versus Bangin. Now, this is not a standard matchup, because Bangin is not a standard deck, but it's worth thinking about how Bangin is going to be built and how we want to interact with Bangin before we think about anything else. So I've only fought one Bangin before now, and I was paying a lot of attention to how that Bangin worked, because it was very interesting to me how Bangin was deciding to do its things. First, let me just read you what Bangin does. It gives them the capacity to stall agendas face up. This is not normally a legal decision. If I access a face-up agenda, installed agenda, they do 2 meat damage, and I take a tag just for accessing it, right? If I can't actually steal it, I still take this, right? If I just touch it, this happens, right? 2 meat damage and a tag. Now, this text on its own is like fine, and when I originally read this text, I was like, sure, that's whatever, right? 2 meat damage, psh, I'm taking an agenda, I don't mind. But there's a context for this, and the context is that there exists another card called Daniela, and Daniela says when you access an agenda, you need to put 2 cards from your hand to the bottom of the deck. This is not exactly, but loosely, do 2 net damage. So now it becomes, when you access an agenda, do 4 net damage. Then there's another upgrade. There's an upgrade that says when you access me, the court may trash me to do 2 meat damage, I think. I only learnt very recently there's actually a difference between meat and net damage, but the idea is that now you're going to 6 net damage. So now you need to have 6 cards in hand if you want to access this bloody agenda, and all you wanted was a silly little agenda, and you're getting tagged. Now the other thing is that to get rid of Daniela, you also need to be able to trash 2 cards. So even if you steal 1, like you click to draw, you're at 7 cards, congratulations, you go in, you lose 6 of your cards, boohoo, they can just install another one and do the same Daniela thing. Now, Seb is lucky that you are on you're on like steel skins and stuff. You got to make sure those don't get Daniela'd, by the way, because remember, that's not actual real damage. It's putting something to the bottom of your deck. That is not damage. But that's the context for Bangin. So Bangin reads like, you know, you may install agendas face up, and the power fantasy is that like, well, and everyone knows what you're doing, but if they try and do anything about it, they die, or they get hurt a lot. But if you understand the context with, you know, there are other cards that aren't like Wayland cards. Well, Angelique is a Wayland card, but Daniela isn't. It gets a lot worse. So I know this about this, and I know that if they have an upgrade, and a installed agenda, I need to be able to have at minimum 6 cards to go in. If not preferably more, just in case they're going to be doing other things. I don't know every card in the game, but I have seen at least that Angelique plus Daniela plus install thing. And if you're thinking Wayland agendas, right, one thing that I think I've learnt as I've played more and more is that like there is just like a limit to the agendas they can be running. One of their agendas which is STS during deployment, asks you to trash a program. If you can't trash a program, you can't steal it. And if you can't steal it, all of this shit's well, this stuff still activates. Daniela doesn't, because Daniela, I think, is when you steal. So there's stuff to think about with that as well. Okay, context about banging aside, what do we think about this hand? I think this hand sucks. Now, I think this hand sucks mainly because one of the big tips that the guy says is that, like, the ideal starting hand is Largo plus something. Now, you can reduce that to saying the ideal starting hand is Largo, because Largo always comes with something. It comes with 4 extra cards. But what they mean is, like, Largo plus a hedge fund, or Largo plus, like, a... maybe an Audrey, is, like, an ideal situation where that will set you up well for the rest of the game. Looking at this, no Largo. Now, not every time you'll draw Largo. So what are, like, the, you know, if you're looking at all hands that you're willing to keep, if these ones are the Largo hands, what are these hands? What are the hands that, like, you might still be willing to keep because they're still in the better 50% of all hands, but they're not Largo? I think Solidarity Badge is probably part of that. I think Audrey is probably part of that. I think Audrey plus Gourmand might be part of that. I think Buffer Drive might be part of that. I think Privileged Access might be part of that. So we're getting close to a hand that might be worth keeping, but if I'm looking at what I'm imagining the first turn to be, is the first turn Solidarity Badge, Strike Fund, Run? That's fine, but I'm not going to be activating a Largo. I'm not going to be activating something else. If it's not trashable because I don't have a Gourmand, then I'm just not getting Solidarity Badge progress. Am I going to be clicking to draw? If I'm clicking to draw, then I may as well just mulligan, because if I'm mulliganing and getting a worse hand, then I'm going to be clicking to draw anyway. So if I'm clicking to draw either way, I may as well click to draw. May as well mulligan so that I have the potential to not need to click to draw and have actual draw cards that I want, right? Now, if this hand had, instead of Hannah, a Gourmand, I might have kept it, because Solidarity Badge plus Gourmand means I guarantee that I get to trash something, which means Solidarity Badge lets me draw a card, the Gourmand lets me draw a card, and I still have Strike Fund for, like, a little bit of money, right? I think Strike Fund, like, alluringly looks like +2 credits when you trash me, but it is also just +3 credits for playing. That's only one less than a Shore Gamble. It's not great, it's not a lovely play, but I don't think it's that bad. Like, if I'm playing my Strike Funds flatly, if I play a game where I'm playing on my 3 Strike Funds, I'm not that upset, frankly. I'm pretty happy with that. I also have this Buffer Drive. Now, Buffer Drive early, I don't know what to think about. On one hand, you want it early because this first bit of text is the first time each turn you trash a card, which is both on your turn and their turn. You gain a benefit. But it's 3 credits to install in a deck that can't cheat its install because it's not a connection resource. I'm not in love with starting with it because I don't know if I'm going to have the capacity to play it while still being aggressive. And if it gets trashed, then I'm just never getting the benefit out of it. While if I get it in the mid game where maybe they have a lilt so I can accept a lilt, that's fine. But I don't want to say at the start of the game I want to be putting myself in a lilting position. And if that's the case, then this is just a dead card in hand. I don't know what to think about Buffer Drive. This is one of the stranger cards in the deck, and I'm very new to the deck, so I don't actually know what I'm doing with it. But I'm pretty sure I mulligan this hand, because I just don't like how it looks. We get a very similar hand. We get Solidarity Badge, and Strike Fund, and Buffer Drive. But we get the 2 cards I was looking for. Or, well, I wanted Largo, mostly. But Gourmand means I can access my Solidarity Badge, and Audrey, starting with an Audrey means that I'm able to get the Virus Counter on Audrey. It's worth talking about how Audrey works for a second, because this was a card that took a long time for me to feel comfortable with how to think about it. So you can sort of see Audrey's Spectre in the side, which is kind of funny. Audrey has 2 bits of text. One is to be able to trash subroutines, you need virus counters. So I don't know if there's a universal symbol for a virus counter, but you need this to be able to break subs. And then to increase strength, you need to trash cards from hand. So, like, self-trash. What this means in practice is that if you aren't able to... how do I put this? Sorry. To get virus counters. There's a 3rd bit of text. To get the virus counters, you need to have trashed their cards. This bit is awkward. This is the most annoying bit of Audrey by far. If they have an ice in front of R&D and an ice in front of HQ, and both of them say end the run, you can't trash their cards. It's really hard to. The only way you can trash their cards is if they install assets. And if they install an asset, if it's a Spin Doctor, they can just recur it, so you're not able to trash it. If it's a upgrade, such as in the Bangan's case, like a Daniela, it's probably going to be behind ice that isn't great to go through, right? Remember, you can't break subroutines without trashing their cards. What this means is that a mid to late Audrey, if they've already iced R&D and HQ, can be really, really hard to activate. And then all it does is give you virus counters, right? So every time you trash a card, you gain your virus counter. You can only break 2 subroutines, right? You break 2 subroutines per virus counter. Let's say you break 2 subroutines. You break the Maskarovka and their own subroutine. You can't trash that card. Great, you're locked out of everything forever. That is part of the reason why the deck is on the Arisaurus Cruise, to be able to get through ice and thus be able to then, again, access cards. It's part of the reason why the deck is on the Gourmands, so that it can trash things that don't have trash costs, or if it does have a trash cost and it's too expensive or you don't want to pay it, you can just trash it. But this top bit is the annoying bit. All of this is to say, half the time when I played this deck, I've drawn Audrey midway through the game, and I still can't do anything with her. She just feels useless. But if you draw her at the start, they can't... I mean, they can double ice, but it's going to be less likely that they're going to double ice. And as soon as you can get your first virus counter on Audrey, then the second one's a lot easier to get, especially if you still get to maintain your Gourmand. And if you have 2 virus counters on Audrey, it's even better. Now, the next part, the last bit I want to mention about Audrey, is that they always have the capacity to purge virus counters, and it's especially good on Audrey, because purging virus counters is almost like installing more ice, but they don't have to spend credits installing the ice, spend credits rezzing the ice, or spend cards having the ice. So they're going to be more likely to purge the virus counters. Nonetheless, we're looking at a starting hand with 4 clicks. We have a card that wants you to trash cards, a card that wants you to trash cards, a card that lets you trash cards, and a click that lets us run. This is a turn where everything gets to activate, and we're not worried about them doing net damage to us from simple accesses. I don't think they're going to be on bite, for example. So this is an ideal almost first turn. And we get to draw from our Gourmand and our Solidarity Badge. Possibly the best first turn you can have that isn't a Largo turn. And honestly, if I had Largo instead of Buffer Drive, I think there's a decent chance you still do this turn before they're able to double ice R&D or HQ, provided that they're not doing that initially. Now, they double ice HQ and R&D. Everything I said was wrong, but this is where my mind was at the time. But they did install a Spin Doctor that they rezzed, and they don't have anything in archives. So we can still do this, this, and this, and ask them, do they want to RFG their Spin Doctor for no value? Well, it's not for no value. It's to deny us value, right? So it is valuable, but it's not the standard value of Spin Doctor. I don't know what the right decision is here. I can, again, do this play and run this, but let's say they RFG the Spin Doctor. Great. They know I'm an Audrey deck. They know I'm not going to be able to get in very easily. I don't get my free draw off Gourmand. I don't get my free draw off this. Let's say these are 2 Maskarovkas, and next turn they just go to a 6th credit and they're able to res both of these Maskarovkas. Or hell, they can go to 4 credits, res a Maskarovka, the second one gets them to 3, right? Because it costs them 3 to res a Maskarovka. And then they gain 2 credits from it. I'm locked out. I need to draw my Arisaurus Crew. I need to draw my Rising Tide. That sucks. They can just do whatever they want for, like, as long as it takes for me to draw those cards. Or I don't let them know I've got an Audrey, and I let them wait till they're not actually able to res these ice. I don't know. I don't really know what the alternative is. I suppose in a sense they're always going to know I have an Audrey before the Audrey gets the counter. So maybe there's just, I should never be thinking about this and just accept, well, if there's a 2 Maskarovkas, that's game over. I'm inherently losing. I don't know the best play, but my instinct is that my hand is telling me play for the trash route, and this is the I do want to make sure I'm at least running on this and trashing this if I can, because to either trash this or to force them to RFG it when they have no value from it is going to be one of the better capacities for me. And if I'm not getting value out of trashing it, they're always just going to let me trash it, right? It's not actually that important. Like, they still benefit the fact that I spent $2, right, to trash it. So at the very least, I should be playing one of these cards that gives me benefit for trashing cards. And so I play Solidarity Badge, and I play Audrey, but I don't do Gourmand. Now, I don't do Gourmand because I don't have the credits to be able to trash this and do this and this. Sorry, but what I've said is like a half-truth. I don't have enough credits. The idea would that be that you could do the Gourmand trash, but I don't want to do the Gourmand trash if I don't have to. I'd rather just spend the trash cost of the card. This is a terrible trash can. So I play the Strike Fund so that I'm able to afford it. And they let me trash it, which means I get my Solidarity Badge, which lets me draw a card, and more importantly, I get Audrey to have a power, fucking virus counter, which means if these are Maskarovkas, I can get through, which just feels great. I can actually get through a Maskarovka, and since I still have the Gourmand in hand, let's say this isn't a trashable card, or this isn't a trashable card, I still get to put the virus counter back on Audrey. Fantastic first turn. I'm actually really happy with this first turn. Would it have been better for them if they RFG'd their Spin Doctor? Possibly. Like, I'm thinking about... I know how the rest of the game goes. I'm pretty sure... Minor spoilers, I don't know what this is at the moment. I'm pretty sure this is a Maskarovka. This isn't. This actually is a hammer. So it's not like I'm... Well, the thing is, this is a hammer, right? So, like, I run into it, they get to trash my Audrey, since this is a hammer. I'm thinking they might have had need to RFG this. But then the argument is like, well, if they have a ton of agendas in here, they might need to have a Spin Doctor to get this Spin Doctor and one agenda put back into R&D, and then this Spin Doctor is able to get the 2 more agendas in here that are stuck back into R&D. If they're agenda flooded, maybe they're just not allowed to. But if they're agenda flooded, they get to prevent me from going in here with my lack of Audrey. Do they know I don't have a Araceris crew? No. But I'm on such low enough money that, like, I would need to have Hedge Fund... Strike Fund and Araceris, and I think a Devil Charm, but I'm not certain. And then also be able to draw into these and be able to, like, feel comfortable that I'm able to trash the thing that I access, because they can just install a new ice. Like, I need to be able to have a Gourmand or hit a trashable card, which means I need money or an extra click to draw or something like that. A lot of yap, but my point is that I think this play here is one of, like, I'm just highlighting the Spin Doctor, but what I mean is, like, choosing to let me trash it as opposed to RFGing it is one of the more interesting decisions that was made in the game. And I don't know if I agree with their play. And if I don't know if I agree with their play, is what I did right either. Because what I did is best if they do the play that they did. Nonetheless, this is what happens. We can move on. They click to draw, they install, and they play KPI, and they decide to put a second ice in front of HQ. This, to me, reads that they have agendas in HQ. But this also reads to me that how the fuck am I gonna get in a HQ without, like, another icebreaker, like a Rising Tide or my Araceris crew, right? Because if it's 2 Maskarovkas, this won't work. If it's a Maskarovka plus a hammer, I have to break the Maskarovka, so they get their hammer off, or whatever, right? 2 ice is too hard for Audrey with 1 virus counter to get through. And if I'm using Audrey as my main way of getting through things, then I need to be able to trash multiple cards, which means I need to find my Manuel at that point. Anyway, Solidarity Badge draws me a card. I very rarely keep this on here just to prevent tags. Maybe I should do that more, but if I can draw a card, I draw a card. I noticed that they only have $6, so they can't res everything, right? One of the ways I can get through this is that they res this card, and then, you know, they can't res both of these cards because it's going to cost them too much money, probably. But, you know, a Solidarity Badge, I draw a card, I draw a card, I draw a card, and I install Gourmand. I think that's fine. I think I'm looking for my Largo, primarily. Especially because they have nothing installed in the servers, and they put this ice here, so they probably want to install something soon. I don't find my Largo, but I do have the capacity to install my Gourmand, and I still have Friend of a Friend. Now, Friend of a Friend doesn't let me install anything, because I don't have another connection resource, but I'm glad I have it, because it means I can get to $9 relatively easily. And I've got Buzzsaw, which allows me to get through some ice. I've got Leech, which mostly acts as a way to make Audrey less expensive, or make this less expensive, or be a second way to make your Araceris be able to trash things. And I have Devil Charm for that, for when we draw Araceris. This is a fine hand. It's not a Largo, it's not a Hedge Fund, it's not a Steel Skin. It's for, like, Audrey value, but that's okay. I'm fine with this hand. They install and res a Spin Doctor. They then install another thing here, and then they use Extract on that thing in order to gain 9 credits. If you don't know what Extract is a 3-cost event that gives them, I believe, $3, and they get another $3, I believe, if they trash a card, right? So the idea is that they gain $6, but sorry, let me make sure I'm understanding this right, because I'm trying to read the text. Yeah, they gain $9 overall, spending 3. So they gain $6, but if and only if they trash a card, right? So they installed a card so they can trash it, so they can get the extra $3. Importantly, that means the card they trashed is an upgrade because they installed it into the server that Spin Doctor is. I think that makes it technically a misplay. I think they're supposed to install it here so that it could have been an asset, and they just misplayed that because they installed it in the same server as this. So I think that's just like a misplay. I think that's just like a minor decision. But it means they've got $12. Now I can't run this and assume that because I ran this, I can run this, which sucks. I click to draw, I get a strike fund. That's a way to get money. That means I can then do like friend of a friend without having to click for a credit, which, clicking for a credit, that's not as efficient as clicking for money. Then I install Leech. I'm thinking that I may as well start getting my counters on Leech for later, right? Getting a Leech early when it's relatively innocuous is fine. And I decide, let's see what it is. And as I mentioned before, it is indeed a hammer. Let's go over what hammer does, because it is specific. During each encounter with this ice, the runner cannot break any more than one of its printed subroutines except using killers. This is not a killer. A killer is specifically the icebreaker that naturally breaks sentries. So we don't have that. That means we can only break one of its subroutines. Audrey normally says break 2 subroutines, but we can only break 1. Let's look at the 3 subroutines. Take a tag, install a resource or hardware, and trash a program. The worst one for us here is trash a program. That is not a decoder factor or killer. None of these are decoder factors or killers. Or all of them are decoders. All of them are a lack of decoder factor or killer. I think that's what I said initially, actually. Importantly, that means they can trash Audrey. If they trash Audrey, I just cannot get into any server that says end their own for like quite a while. Especially since like their deck is probably going to be on Maskarovka. And Maskarovka is a barrier, and that means I need to draw my Rising Tide. My Buzzsaw won't be enough. Now, if they run like a Scatterfield, then I can get in, I suppose. In addition, I'm never going to be able to get through Hammer again unless... I mean, look, I can get through Hammer as much as I want because none of it actually says end their own. But it'd be really bad if this happens consistently over and over and over and over again without me being able to at least interact with it a little bit, and that would be what Audrey would let me do. In a sense, right? Like I say that, but I only mean that loosely, right? The only time I'm not breaking this subroutine is if I think that I no longer need my Audrey. And maybe that'll happen as like a Hail Mary, but that's unlikely to. This does mean that if I'm breaking this subroutine, that means both of these are occurring. I take a tag. Taking a tag means I can install Friend of a Friend, but installing Friend of a Friend means they can then trash it with a resource. But if they trash Friend of a Friend, it means they're not trashing Solidarity Badge. So either way, you know, they're trashing something, and I'd probably rather have my my Solidarity Badge. Sorry, there are ladies outside who are very loud, and I'm getting slightly distracted. They're singing ABBA. So I increase strength by trashing 2 cards. I can trash the Strike Fund and something else. I forget what I choose to trash. It might be the Buzzsaw. And I choose to install my Friend of a Friend, paying 2 less thanks to taking a tag. And they end up trashing that Friend of a Friend, preventing me from getting money in the future. But I do get to go in. So I'll show you all of that occurring. I spent a lot of time thinking about how I want to do this. And I do trash the Buzzsaw. I get rid of the subroutine that says trash a program. I install Friend of a Friend. They then trash Friend of a Friend. And of all the cards I access Petty Cash, which is one of the most meaningless cards to trash in the game because they still get basically half the benefit of Petty Cash when it's trashed. But again, I want Audrey to be able to break things, and I want to draw a card, and I want to be able to draw a card with Solidarity Badge as well. Or possibly remove the tag, right? That's probably more realistically what I'm going to ask you to do. Because if you think about the 2 things that Solidarity Badge lets you do, you can either draw a card, or you can remove a tag. Now, removing a tag costs a click and 2 credits, and drawing costs a click. So this is just the more efficient thing to do with Solidarity Badge, just like numerically. Not necessarily the best thing to do always, but numerically the best thing to do. Then I click to draw, because what else am I going to do? Remove a tag? I want my money. I want to be able to get a logo. I want to be able to play a Strike Fund if I draw one. Even though I only have 1 left in the deck. I'm looking through my deck for what Privileged Access lets me do. Let's quickly go over what Privileged Access does. it lets you run archives, and it gives you a tag if you run archives, but you don't get to see what's in archives. Because you take a tag, you get to install a card from hand, specifically a connection resource. You then get to install a program from archives, which would be friend of a friend here. A resource from archives, which would be friend of a friend. And at threat 3, you get to install a program, which would be Gormand. But we're not at threat 3, so that doesn't matter. But I'm just looking to see, like, I'm just reminding myself what I've trashed, and the only thing I can install here is friend of a friend, which is a good thing to good thing to reinstall. Don't get me wrong, you get to reinstall friend of a friend. That lets you get money. That's amazing. Anyway, they first click, they remove that petty cache. They just RFG it, getting their buck. So that's not really a click, it's like a 0th click. Click 1, they draw a card, and click 2, they protect archives, which makes sense. They probably know how to play against Unarch. They know we're on Eru, which lets us run archives in order to breach each R&D. We're on privileged access, you know, they know to protect archives, and that's fine. They then install a card in server 2. I don't have Largo, so I don't get to benefit from that. So I choose to remove a tag. Then and I know it looks a little awkward, but I draw a card, One of these cards I draw is the price, so I decide to play the price. And the price, you get to trash 4 cards. One of those cards ends up being my 3rd strike fund, so I get my money back. From the price, our options were Strike Fund, which I got my money from, Transfer of Wealth, which you can't install, Solidarity Badge, which I already have one of and is a unique card, so I'm not choosing that, and Arisator Screw. So I pick Arisator Screw. It's the only option that actually lets me get any value from the card that I played, from the text that lets me install the card, specifically. Now, we do have Devil Charm, Arisator Screw, which is wonderful. They don't know we have Devil Charm. I don't want to install a Devil Charm without being able to run, because if I install Devil Charm, they're just going to install an Ice here, and now no longer can I run R&D. But because I have Devil Charm, I can finally continue to run R&D consistently for 1 turn. Be it letting my Ordering get more counters, letting Solidarity Badge hopefully get something, and hopefully seeing an agenda, right? This is, like, in my mind, one of the tempo plays, right? They think that Hammer is all they need to defend, and Hammer's a great card to defend against my deck, because it's an Audrey deck. But with Devil Charm, I can click 1, Devil Charm, click 2, run, and hopefully see multiple cards, or trash multiple things. Which means that if I want to set that up, I probably want to have enough money to be able to trash things. So I click for a credit so that I have 4 credits. So next turn I can go 5 credits, Sure Gamble, Devil Charm, run, and be able to trash the thing that I see. It means I only get 1 run, but that's okay, because I'll also have a ton of money. So that's what I'm thinking over the course of my turns. Now, I'm looking back in here to see if anything happened with Privileged Access, just trying to, you know, on their turn, you always think on what they're doing on their turn. And again, friend of friend is the only thing that really matters here. They click 1, draw, which they've been consistently doing. Click 2, hedge fund, means we'll get their money. And click 3, they install another card. I'm seeing this and I'm like, okay, this is the banging server. This is the server where one of these is a Daniela, one of these is a Angelique, and they're going to start putting agendas in here and trying to start doing things. But they didn't install any ice in front of Hammer, so my whole game plan that I'm thinking of how I want to try and get some agendas is trying to run R&D. So, as I said, I click for a credit, I play Sure Gamble, I play Devil Charm, and I know that I want to trash the piece of ice, so I do. I breach, and I see a Spin Doctor. Wonderful card to see. Very willing to trash that. I mean, we already know there's a Spin Doctor in here. I think. Actually, I don't think that's true. When they did their early Spin Doctor, they probably put back in their Spin Doctor. That's not something I actually pay attention to in the VOD review, and that's the sort of thing I should pay attention to the VOD review. And since we're in a VOD review, let's quickly check when that happened and see what they did. With their Spin Doctor, they put back in the Spin Doctor and the Extract. Glad I checked that, because that's the sort of thing I should be paying attention to. So that means they, this is 1 of 2 Spin Doctors left in the deck. Still, we get to add a power counter, a virus counter to Audrey. That feels great. That means we can get into things like HQ, or we can get into this and only spend 1 virus counter. You know, having more virus counters is always going to feel great. And a Spin Doctor is like a high quality card to trash. Now, we don't get an extra counter on Solidarity Badge, because Solidarity Badge already gets a counter from trashing an ice, which is what we did with our Series Crew. But they install STS during deployment and put 2 power counters on it and say, you know, I'm banging, I'm going to do 6 damage. If I score this, I get to trash your Audrey. If you access this, I get to choose what to trash, which means I get to trash Leech. So, go for it. Solidarity Badge gets us a Steel Skin. This allows us to much more easily run this server. Now, we could click for a credit, click for a draw, have 6 cards in hand, and be likely to get in and feel fine. But that's taking up partially our whole hand, and remember, Audrey needs you to get rid of cards from hand in order to do well. Luckily, with Steel Skin, we get to trash a card from hand and do well really easily. So I still click to draw, just in case, like, I draw another Steel Skin, or I draw... I was probably actually thinking at the moment if I draw Strike Fund, but I shouldn't be able to draw Strike Fund, so I should just be thinking Steel Skin, so that Audrey can trash things, because it will probably need to in order to increase the strength. Possibly. I mean, with Leech, maybe it's just not going to have a lot of strength, the ice in front. The question then becomes, is it even worth running this? Like, R&D is open. We can run R&D. Next turn, we know what they're going to do. They're going to put 3 advancement counters on this and trash out Audrey. But, like, okay, maybe we can accept that and try and do something else. We could even run Archives with, like, a privileged access next turn. And maybe it's worth running this turn to see what's in front of Archives in case I'm actually able to break it or not, right? There's an argument that maybe I'm supposed to run HQ because they're not going to have enough money to res this and put also 3 counters on it. Maybe I'm supposed to run this, jack out at this spot after they've spent money, and then run this, right? I think I'm very simple-minded, and I'm like, well, not only can I probably survive this, I get 3 points from it. And that's, like, generally a good thing, but the question is, like, maybe I'm going to get more points by running HQ. Maybe I'm going to get more points by running Archives with the privileged access and going into R&D afterwards, or something like that. That being said, running this is probably not a bad play, since I'm able to survive it. If I'm not able to survive it, then it is a bad play. Sort of tautologically. Anyway, they have a Maskarovka, so I trash my Steel Skin. Remember, I trash it specifically because I know Daniela is part of their deck, and Daniela will put things at the bottom of the stack, which means you don't actually get the benefits from Steel Skin. But I break Maskarovka, and again, it's a Daniela, and it's a Angelique. So the first thing I do is access the SDS, and it's worth thinking that Daniela will make us lose 2 cards from stealing, and Angelique will make us lose 2 cards. We have 5 cards. We're actually able to install a connection resource, so may as well. Genuinely may as well. They're not going to be able to deal damage to us yet, I believe. Especially if I click to remove the tag, so they can't enter-line us. But after a while, I spent a lot of time thinking about this. I also zoom out so that I can see more of the screen. And I'm just making sure that I'm not actually taking 6 damage, I'm only taking 4. I decide to install it. I steal the SDS because if I also run this and not steal the SDS, that would be a terrible reason to run it. I lose my Leech, that's fine. I trash the Daniela, so I get to put a counter on my Audrey, as well as Solidarity Bench, where it might also be on Steel, I don't recall. I decide to click to draw. I think I still lose to end of the line. With this play. I guess I don't know. Yeah. I mean, the idea would be you don't install Friend of a Friend and you click to remove the tag if you want to be end of the line. Or I can just say they don't have end of the line. They're going to be a measured response deck, not an end of the line deck. So don't bother about it. Click to draw because you want cards in your hand. Arguably risky. Because I think end of the line you can play it at threat 0. It should just be... Thinger. It should just be, if you're tagged, take 4 damage. Remove the tag. I think. It's worth mentioning here, obviously. We're at 3 agenda points. Now we got to start thinking about measured response. Measured response is if you've... It's 5 credits. Do either 4 damage or the runner has to spend 8 credits. So this is their cost, this is our cost. But conditionally, they have to have had a run on the previous turn, which is not a hard condition to meet, but it is worth mentioning because if I can just win on that turn, then I win on that turn. And it needs to be threat 4. Threat 4, so there's 2 conditions, threat 4 and if you've ran. One of the pieces of advice from the list earlier, the experimental data core list, is that you got to respect double measured response. I'm willing to respect double measured response. That's the thing I'm willing to do. Obviously, they kind of fought it. I mean, look, if I was at threat 4, they could click for credit, and do it. But it's worth mentioning that, like, a double measured response, they need to have 10 credits for. That's not easy for them to have, but that's what they would need to have for it. But from here on out, half of my thoughts are, if I run and steal an agenda, I got to make sure I can be at least 1 measured response if they're at capacity to get 5 credits, and 2 if they're at the capacity to get 10 credits. This is where my mind will be at for the rest of the video. It's worth keeping that in mind, that for the rest of the video, this is where my mind is mostly at. But I will say, this was a successful run. But I was saying before the run, we've got to evaluate in our mind whether this was a better decision than trying to do privileged access stuff. Because we lost a ton of our cards here, including a buffer drive, including both our privileged accesses, and I think like maybe one other important thing. Nonetheless, I mean, what was it? Sorry, we're a VOD review. We can just go back in time. A T400 memory damage. That's not that important. We lost a Gourmand. We lost the price. So we lost everything here, right? Except the friend of a friend, which we installed. We lost a T400. That's fine. I don't mind losing a T400. We lost a Gourmand. That's kind of bad, but not the worst. Both privilege accesses kind of suck, but if we're not going to run archive, then it's not a big deal. And the buffer drive can be bad, especially if we lose our Ashen later, depending on how long the game goes. The price is fine. That's just like a efficient card, but it's not an intrinsic card. It'd be worse if we lost our Manuel or Eru. It'd be worse if we lost our Lago. And we got to keep our friend of a friend, which feels good. Anyway, for their turn, they install a Spin Doctor. They click to draw, and they install in front of R&D. Now, this needs to be a Maskirovka, or they can't raise it. Or, I mean, it can be a Tide or something, but it's probably a Maskirovka. But they also install a Spin Doctor, which means they can get the Spin Doctor back from archives that they had. It means we can run to try and beat that Spin Doctor. Click 1, I do the price. The price sees Marrow, Gourmand, Arisaris, and Sure Gamble. I'm in a bit of a strange spot where I can't pick Sure Gamble. Marrow would kill me because you have to take a core damage, which means maybe I should have drawn, so I could have played Marrow. And Arisaris Crew is fine, but I need money to pay for it. I would need to find my Devil Charm, which means I need to draw. We only have one left in the deck, one Devil Charm left in the deck. And I don't have Leech anymore, so that's the other way I can reduce strength. So Arisaris Crew is probably not going to activate for the rest of the game. It's unlikely for it to. So I pick Gourmand, because Gourmand lets me draw a card, which is nice. And his, Gourmand's like a happy-looking bro, so he's just fun to look at. And it just synergizes with continuing to do Solidarity Badge stuff. It felt like the right play to me, especially because, again, they're low on credits, so even if I run R&D and this is a Maskirovka, and they res it, like, I click to draw, I run, it's Maskirovka, they have no credits, I can run HQ, and that feels good as well. But we do have to click to draw to be able to increase the strength of Audrey. And then I click to draw again. I don't know if this is the right play. I think I should have been more pressuring. I think this is a perfect opportunity to say they're at 3 credits, less pressure. No. Yes. Yes, it is. Well, no, it's not. I say that, but if we find an agenda, they measured response and kill us, right? So the only benefit to this, well, there's no benefit, because I get an agenda and I lose. If it's a card that I want to trash, I may as well just click to draw and do that on a future turn and get my Gourmand to activate on a future turn. Solidarity Badge would be the only unique thing this turn, but, like, fuck it, I suppose. And if they raise this as a Maskirovka, then it's fine. But, like, okay, they just won't raise it, right? Like, if it's an agenda, it's an agenda. If it's an agenda, then I'm forced to run this again, and then they just let me in again. I'd have to see 2 agendas immediately. That's unlikely. Possible, but unlikely. They might Spin Doctor in non-agendas to make it less likely. Yeah. Realistically, I'm probably not running this. And since I'm realistically not running it, then I should draw. And if I'm drawing, then I'm drawing. Hell happened at the end. I friend of a friend. Right. My last click is friend of a friend. I see my Largo and my Valentina, and I'm like, well, what I want now is money. So I just click to get the money now. And I use that to install a Largo so that if they install new things, I can draw cards. I think that's a good play, actually. Making it so that I can get my Largo and my money. That's pretty good. For what it's worth, they can always trash this Largo, but they have to get rid of a card in hand, and that doesn't feel great for them. Click 1, they play from hand a Petty Cash. Click 2, they draw a card, and click 3, they do Hedge Fund. So great, now they have money again, which means they can either raise this ice, or they can do Measured Response, or they can do both. With that in mind, now I need to think, well, I gotta be able to beat Measured Responses. So I'm clicking to draw a ton. I click to draw, I click to draw, I click to draw, and now I can beat double Measured Response. So I decide, let's run HQ. Is this the right play? Not HQ, sorry, probably R&D, right? Yeah. I don't know. I think one thing I struggle with is when I'm fighting doubled measured response as a possibility. When should I be threatening and when should I be drawing, right? Because I could have easily drawn to 5 here so that the turn after I can threaten more. But I'm seeing them at 9 credits and I'm like, okay, if they res this and it is 3 credits, they're going to go down to 6. They can double measured response if they have a hedge fund. And even if they do have that, I'm not losing yet. And I really just want to see cards. And they can't measure response until I find a agenda anyway. And if it's an agenda, then like I'm also able to win possibly if they double measured response because they won't have money. So that if they double measured response and I can pay for it and I can run HQ or R&D or archives and still try and win the game again. So it's not that good for them. But maybe I should take it slower. But if I take it slower, then they just double ice or put more things in the Daniela server, and then I'm fucked again anyway. Because once there are things, right, it's what I think about. Once they have something in the Daniela server, and I want to steal it, that means I am spending all of my health in cards, my, the 4 damage or whatever I need to be able to bang and plus Daniela it. Then they measured response me afterwards, so I lose. So there is that sort of soft pressure that I need to be able to beat, right? Because that is a harder win con for them. With the exception, now we go on the other side. I don't have to run this, right? But then they can score it once, then they can score it twice, and it's the third one that's the awkward thing. Unless they have 1-3s, then they can just score a lot quicker, or 1-2s. I run R&D, and I see a measured response. Now, seeing a measured response in R&D means they are less likely to have 2 in hand, but they could still have 2 in hand. It's just less likely. But perfect card for me to trash with Gourmand. I know it has a trash cost of 3, but that puts me below enough credits, so I could be double measured response, and I would just lose. And I want Gourmand to draw me a card. I want the thing on Solidarity Badge, so I know I want to trash it. And putting a measured response in here means that they need to use their Spin Doctor to get it back. If they don't have 2 in hand. So that's also a way to make me feel a little safer. If I can ever get certainty that there are 2 measured response in archives, then I'm more likely to... Then I only need to worry about 1 for the rest of the game, with exceptions of recursion. So I trash it. I get my thing on Thinger. We draw a Manuel, which feels nice. That means I can start double accessing. I get my thing on Thinger. I just realized I said. I beat my power counter on Solidarity Badge. They petty cash out, so they get more money. Then they install an ice in front of server 2, and they install a thing here. There's a chance that this is an agenda. You shouldn't assume this isn't an agenda. There's a chance it is. There's a chance it's an Angelique. There's a chance it's, I don't know, even an anthill. Decent chance it's an anthill. But we get to do Largo. Yay! Largo gets rid of a transfer of wealth. Boo! But we do get a Steel Skin. Steel Skin's a great card to be able to protect ourselves, especially from like measured response worries. So I'm seeing this. I've actually got money, and I've got cards in hand. I've got 7 cards in hand, including a Steel Skin. It's time to fucking run. It's time to find things. So I install Manuel because I'm tagged, so Manuel lets me double access. And we see a Winchester, which is kind of sad. All right, what do we see? We see a Zato. I choose not to trash Zato. I think we're at the point of the game where Zato isn't too worrisome for me, and I'd rather keep my money than trash it. And if they want to install Zato, that's fine, but I'm not too worried about it. But they don't raise the thing in front of already, then it was a Winchester afterwards, so 2 things I can't trash. I decided to run HQ, try to see if I can get them to spend money, because if they spend money, that means they can't do things they want to do, and it gives me more info. It is a Maskarovka. I delete Maskarovka by trashing a... Lago. A second Lago. Perfect thing to trash. You might ask why not Steel Skin, but that means I would be at 6 cards, and I don't want to have to be forced to play a card. I'd rather have the capacity for them to trash my Steel Skin. But we hit a Basalt Spire. Now we are actually in measured response range. We're no longer in conditional measured response range. One condition is met. We made a run. Another condition is met. We're at threat 6. Threat 4. Well, we're at threat 6, which is circumstantially also threat 4. It's just above threat 4. So I actually have to be worried about double measured response. Now, we do not currently survive doubled measured response. Because even if they hit these cards, Steel Skin draws me 2 cards, I'm at 3, I lose the double measured response. I'm not able to get the money that I need. That's just not going to happen. So we sort of relying on the fact that one measured response is in here. Hopefully there's not one in here. I saw a second card in hand, and that card... Oh! Sorry, something actually really important did happen here. We didn't just see the Basalt Spire. First card we saw a measured response. Which means if we trash this, 2 of them are in here, which means we are so much safer. They can spin doctor both of the measured responses back into R&D if they really want, but that means they don't have to find it. I do choose to spend 3 to trash measured response, but this could have been a misplay. I could have clicked to draw a card, clicked to gain a credit, and that would put me at $8. So that if they did hedge fund plus measured, I would survive. Which is probably what I should have done. But in my mind, I was thinking, if 2 are in the trash, that puts me as safer in future, right? For the next turn, you know, they can always spin doctor and then find it again, and that is not as safe. But in the long run, I thought trashing it would be safe. But I don't know. This is where I really don't know how to be thinking about cards like measured response when recursion exists as a relatively easy to access idea for them. I do trash measured, partly also because it upgrades Solidarity Badge, right? So it means I get to draw a card and continue doing the things that I need to be doing in future, right? Because my deck is contingent on trashing cards, I think it's like, it makes sense for me to want to trash measured response and go for the lines that require me to be trashing measured response, because that benefits me in the long term, because not only does it prevent them from easily accessing measured response, it also means I get to benefit from my cards that have trashing as a condition. But it does also mean that if they do just recur it back in and then find it, I just lose straight up. But I trash it, and I still basalt. I mean, the other thing is that at the time, I didn't know I'd be actually getting to 4 agenda points. So at the time, it seemed a little bit more fine, because it's not as if they're also going to as obviously be going for measured response as their main win con yet. They say they did bad math, because Basalt Spire, when you steal it, lets them recur a card. So I see this bad math, and I'm like, okay, this is a tell. It's a tell that they have 2 measured responses in hand. So now the question is, can they do 2 measured responses? That would mean it'd have to be measured response, hedge fund, which is possible. They have played, I think, 1 hedge fund, but this to me implies that they can't actually do what they need to do. I click to remove a tag here. At this point, I'm thinking that they can't win. Well, okay. My thinking here is that if they measured response, I lose no matter what I do. If they end of the line measured response, I lose, but that's a thing I can prevent losing to. You may ask, why not install Valentina? I've got an answer, but it's not a great answer, and this is because I'm misplaying. I don't install Valentina because I want to have Valentina as a source of damage. I was thinking, like, would I rather have a source of damage in hand or 2 credits? And I was thinking I would rather have a source of damage in hand. What I mean by that is something that I'm willing to lose to the damage demon in like 2 turns from now when damage actually ends up mattering. And I thought I might not use money ever again. Money just might never come up again. Because at this point, I think I'm just running R&D and HQ with Audrey and hoping that I get a win. And if money's not going to become an issue again, because I'm never also getting to 8 credits anymore. I'm well past this being a goal, right? I've played a friend of a friend. I mean, if I get friend of a friend, then it becomes a goal, but that's instant, right? It's not like a sure gamble where I need to like click to credit, sure gamble, right? In my mind, I'm done with that. And if I'm done with that as a goal, then I don't need money. And so then money I can just spend this last little bit of money to do this. Is this logic right? I'm explaining to you my logic. That doesn't mean the logic is right. I don't know, but my instinct is probably no. I probably should have just played Valentina and kept my buck. The other question is, do I even want to remove a tag? Because I've just prevented Manuel from working for the next forever. Now, they are always able to trash Manuel, right? They just lose a card in hand. Okay. Oh, well, they lose 2, because Manuel needs an extra card in hand to trash. So maybe they're not trashing Manuel, but they could trash Largo or something. It is probably a misplay. What I probably should have done is run R&D. I think like I have 1 click left. If I run Well, no, I already ran R&D this turn, right? Hold on. Let me just double check. Yeah, I saw the Winchester. Yeah. No, and Zato. No, I shouldn't have run R&D. I could run Archives. It's not a bad idea to run Archives. See if there's an agenda in Archives. See what is in Archives. Make them spend money resing the thing in front of Archives. So I probably should have ran Archives rather than removing a tag, because the tag is useful for me. Like, if I'm claiming that I actually don't need to use Valentina, that doesn't mean I need to get rid of the tag. That just means I don't need to use Valentina. And if they have End of the Line, which is what I was worried about, I suppose I should get rid of the tag, but, like, the tag is also kind of important for my win con, for, like, sieging 2 cards. So, look, I think removing the tag is a misplay. Not because it's not safe. I actually think it's safe to remove the tag. I just think being safe is not necessarily right. Even though they have no agenda points, they're very close to beating me with just, like, damage. And I'd rather try and win quicker than they can set up a win against me with, like, getting the double measured response in hand. Because obviously, like, they shuffled hedge funds in immediately. They have the double measured response. All they're looking for is the hedge funds. So as soon as they find, if they mandatory drew a hedge fund, they would have won. And as soon as they find a hedge fund, they win, right? And they click to draw to find these hedge funds. So I think that I misplayed by removing the tag. I had logic for it, but the logic is dumb. And that is the point of VOD review, to remove the logic. And dumb is probably maybe too pejorative of a word. But I should have... I also, like, I get to keep it 4 credits. I said money wasn't that important, but, like, if I draw a hedge fund, then all of a sudden I have 9 credits by clicking for a credit, then drawing. Like, that's not a bad decision. So, I don't know. I was worried about End of the Line, and I was thinking, if it's measured response I need to be worried about, I can live in the world where money isn't an issue. But that's just, like, not true. I don't know. I haven't fought a lot of Wayland, so I don't have, like, instinctual things, so I'm thinking on my feet here, and my thinking on my feet is just not always right, because sometimes you have 2 left feet, and then you're not thinking on your feet properly. So, to categorize this, because to end this, sorry, not to categorize it. To end all of what I wanted to say, I think what I'm claiming is that the right play here would have been to run Archives. The second most right play, like, claiming running isn't the right play if you're not allowed to run. It was probably click for a credit so that I can go to 5 credits. Not trying to beat measured response via money necessarily. Giving myself the capacity to beat it if I draw it with, like, my Solidarity badge. But so that I'm not removing my Manuel, and so that if I run HQ, I'm able to trash the measured responses as well. Like, that's the other option, right? I can always just continue running HQ and trash the measured responses again so that they can't recur into it. So I think I picked the worst of all worlds, where I got rid of the tag because I wanted to play safe, and because, like, I'm at 6 points. All I need is 1 more agenda. I can play safe in, like, a very loose sense, but I need to make sure I'm hitting the agenda in R&D or HQ or Archives or wherever the hell it is. They put an ice in front of R&D. Perfectly reasonable, right? They want me to cost more with Audrey, not just cost the virus cannons, but also cost the cards in hand with Audrey to increase the strength. I draw with Solidarity Badge and Error. Perfect. Genuinely perfect draw. It means that I can bypass this bullshit that they just installed and see 2 cards in here and give myself the tag back. This is an out. A very lucky out. One of the best cards I could have drawn. I only have 10 cards left in my deck, so it's not that unlikely for me to have drawn it. 1 in 10. But I sort of get saved by my poor play, right? Because this was really poor play. Removing the tag was really poor play. But that means I get to play Error. I play Error, I take the tag, I don't install Valentina because that would remove the tag. That gives me the benefit from Manuel. And I get to see 3 cards here. I get to see 1 from Error, 1 from Manuel, and 1 from... that you always get to see. They have a Maskarovka. It is easy to break through that. I just trash my other Audrey. We see a hedge fund, which means we know they're going to draw a hedge fund next turn. Now, luckily, hedge fund puts them to 9 credits. So I'm seeing this hedge fund, and I'm like, well, they can go to 9 credits. To get to the 10th credit, they still need to do another thing, which means they can only afford 1 measured response. So seeing a hedge fund does not mean I'm dead next turn. Oh, whoopsies. Sorry. We don't see an agenda, though. We see a hedge fund, we see a Descent, and we see a Zato, which is sad. That is sad. We don't win yet. we've got 2 clicks left. And I don't know what to do with these 2 clicks at the moment, but I'm thinking HQ is one of the safer things to do, because if there's an agenda in HQ, I get to win. If there's... I don't get to trash measured response anymore, because I didn't keep my money. And if I kept my money, I may have been able to trash measured response. I also want them to spend their credits. Like, if they res this, it means they can't do what they want to do. I trash a card. Now... Sorry, I think I said trash my Audrey last time. I probably trashed, like, a Lager or something. But I don't think I trashed an Audrey. I probably am supposed to trash a Steel Skin. I think I know... I think at this point I'm like, well, I'm going to draw a card if I don't win here. So I'm going to be at 4 cards, and that beats the measured response they might have, so that's fine. But I should have just trashed the thingo so that I had more options. It's just me thinking too cutely. I'm thinking like, well, they don't know I've got a Steel Skin, so when they do measured response, they're going to be like, oh, she is a Steel Skin. Who could have guessed? But I should have just done it, right? Like, there's no reason to be cute about it. We see an Afshar, and we see an Anemone. So that means their hand is measured response, Anemone, Afshar, and then an unknown card. They mandatory draw, so now we know this is a hedge fund, because we went into them a second ago. So we know there's a hedge fund. Their first click, this unknown card, was a fucking extract. So they trash this, they get 6 credits, putting them to 10, they doubled measured response, and they win the game. Now, at the time, I just completely forgot that like, extract could do that. But I'm also looking at their hand, and there was specifically extract that had to be their last card, right? There was nothing else that was allowed to be their last card. It had to be extract specifically, which we didn't see and didn't know about. But I completely forgot that extract is a way to get 6 credits, because I was seeing 4 credits and was like, there's no way they can get to 10, right? Because even with hedge fund, the like easiest way to get money card, they just couldn't have done it. That sucks. I could have won this game in a couple of ways. I was inefficient in a couple of ways. The other way I could have won this game is that this is an agenda and this is an agenda, as they explained to me in the chat right after. So there's an agenda in here, which is 1, and there's an agenda in here. But they also say to me that there are 6 agendas. I don't know if this was recorded. It may not have been recorded. There are 6 agendas in R&D. I saw 3 cards. It was not average for me to see it. But over the course of 2 turns, it kind of was, right? Like, if we're thinking, I saw 5 cards in 25, right? I think 25 is the most accurate number for that. 5 cards in 25. I should have seen them. But yeah, I should have run archives more. I didn't run archives when I should have. I should have at least checked it once. I should have ran server 2 because they didn't do anything with the thing in server 2. Like, if it's an Angelique, that kind of sucks, but I think it's worth checking it. But also, like, it's not unlikely for them to have something in HQ, I don't think. With the... Well, yeah, I mean, they shuffled R&D before they drew, so, like, you might be thinking, well, you know what was in HQ? It was the stuff you saw from the last scribe, but no, because of the Spin Doctor, they shuffled back in. But yeah, that was the game. But a lot of the game was me thinking a bit strangely, right? So if we go back to the start, I want to quickly go over the game, because one thing I think that's important in VOD reviews is like remembering to see the game in a full context and going back to the decisions you thought might have been interesting and seeing if they make more sense as the game plays out in full. But there was a lot of game here. Mulligan was fine. I think running the Spin Doctor we talked about a lot. Would they have gotten a lot if they had not done the Spin Doctor? Probably not. In the end of the day, the draw and the Audrey, I always floated one Audrey. Well, no, it did matter, right? Because this Audrey counter mattered for this, right? Sorry, the thing is broken again. So, like, you know, would have mattered for this. That's something that would be worth considering. I think it's worth thinking about the Audrey's relationship to this hammer play. My relationship with money was a bit strange this game. I didn't have a lot of money for most of the game when I could have opted to try and have a little bit more. I let them trash a friend of a friend with hammer when I could have let them trash the Solidarity Badge, but the other side of Solidarity Badge was good for me, like the entire game. Was stealing the SDS, right? This is another question, sorry. I'm not at the right moment for this, but like, was stealing the SDS the right play? I don't know. And I say I don't know, and like the point of a VOD review is to try and work out the answer. But think that's like a really hard question to ask. We know now that this is a Maskirovka, so we know we can get through with our privileged access. The privileged access would be a threat 3 because they would have scored the STS. We would have gotten our Audrey back, and we would have installed a friend of a friend and something. Oh, but we wouldn't have gotten through because we wouldn't have an Audrey. And that being a Maskirovka means we're never doing privileged access. So that means it was right. Easy answer. I'm glad we didn't lose our Audrey when Maskirovka was keeping us out of archives, now that we know that, right? This measured response. Yeah, there are 2 measured responses we trashed, and I think I'm going to say... I think the first one's okay to trash. I think the benefit we got from that was quite nice, even doing it with the Gourmand. The second one, probably still good to trash. I think we got benefits from that. But we shouldn't have done what we did everything else. Like, I've talked about the tag a lot. We should have ran archives. We should have clicked for a credit if we wanted to. We could have done a ton of things that we should have done and didn't. And I think from then on, I misplayed. And I was hoping to get an out. And I just didn't need to rely on the outs I was hoping to get. But, yeah. Is there a conclusion on how I want to think about this? Probably not. I think instead of there being an overall macro issue, I think it's just a lot of micro issues for playing against Wayland that I wasn't thinking about properly. Like thinking that I should have removed the tag was probably wrong. They might just not be an Enderline deck, or Enderline might not have been relevant. I should have ran archives more. Like, it's fine. They are probably comfortable putting things in archives. Especially at the time they put that in archives, I assume, was before I was at 6 points. So it allows them to get the win if I steal that, or at least try and go for the win. And yeah, I probably should have respected measured response by actually trying to have the money rather than saying, fuck it, they only will ever have one measured response with how they've been playing, and then they get the other one because the Basalt Spire gives it to them back in hand. And maybe that's part of it, right? Maybe part of it is acknowledging that, like, some of the agendas I'm going to steal are going to be recursion agendas for them. And due to that nature, trashing a measured response is not that beneficial. But then the other thing is that by trashing a measured response, they didn't get to recur back their hedge fund, which would have been the other way that they could have guaranteed the win. So I still prevented them from guaranteeing the win, right? Like, by trashing the measured response, I actually prevented myself from losing on that turn. No, that's not true, because I had 8 credits from it. But then I would have wanted my Solidarity Badge to get a power counter. Man. I know I'm taking a long time, but I really want to think about this. Yeah, I mean, I had 7 credits, so I would have had to click for a credit to get my last thing. Like, if I don't trash it, and I steal this, they take back their hedge fund rather than their measured response. We know they've already got one in hand because of how they discussed it, which means I click for a credit, and I survive double measured response. I have to be at that for the rest of the game, but so do they, right? I mean, the other thing, which is a little funny, is that instead of recurring their hedge fund, they can recur the 3rd measured response and try and set it up for much, much longer in the future. And by that I mean, just play 2 hedge funds over the course of the next couple turns, or even 1 hedge fund and click for credit 3 times. But they probably can't do that, because I can probably run R&D, and I'd probably run archives at some point. Or I'd run HQ and just trash the measured response that they're trying to use. But they've also got this spin doctor. I think what I want to say is my final claim is that I think trashing the measured response before knowing I was getting a Basalt Spire is probably fine. But I think if you know that they're on Basalt Spire, which I think you do know, I think like Bangin is likely to be on Basalt Spire because it's a 5/3 and it gives them their measured responses and their hedge funds and whatever. Yeah, hedge fund. So I think I'm supposed to claim that it's still right to trash it, but I should have ran archives immediately after. Well, I mean, if they don't have an agenda in there, do I run around archives immediately after? No, I think I'm supposed to, but yeah. If I don't trash measured response. Because if I don't trash measured response, like, and I don't steal an agenda, right? I continue running R&D, I continue running archives. Eventually, for me to win, I'm going to be stealing agendas, and I'm probably not doing 2 in 1 turn. So they're always going to have that measured response to be able to kill me, and I'm just making it harder for them to do that. But then I'm also making it easy for me to, yeah. Look, I'm saying the same thing over and over again. I'm saying the same thing of, I'd be able to survive it, but they'd have it. And it just depends on what sort of stake you want to play on, right, at that point. Like, am I playing on the stakes where I always need to have this, and I always need to have this, and they always need to have this, and 2 cards in hand? Maybe that's a stake I should accept more than the stake of them only having 1 in hand, and I only need 1 of these to be true. But they could get the other one before I can make the other thing true. And that's probably the more macro way of thinking about it, right? Like, there's 2 worlds I'm sort of choosing. One world is which they always have 2 MR, and therefore I always need 8 credits and 4 cards. Or I choose the world where they have 1 MR, and I only need 4 cards. But the issue with this world is that there's also just like a 30% chance on every turn that I just happen to die, because they just happen to have drawn their second measured response, or they just happen to have drawn their hedge fund that allows them to do the second measured response before I'm able to get to the 8 credits, and I'm not getting to the 8 credits without an eye for an eye. And even if I get an eye for an eye, that's still not that easy to do. I still need to have 3 credits to be able to install it, and then also make sure I've got no tags, and then be able to activate it. Or do my short gamble on my maybe 1 I have left in deck. And then also make sure I'm still keeping my money for it, right? So I think my instinct is to go for this world, because this world gives me more flexibility. I get to actually spend my credits. I get to... That's it, right? I get to spend my credits. That actually is all I need to justify the flexibility. But I probably should be saying I want to live in this world. But I just don't... This world is scary. This world makes me go, I don't want to live in this world. But I think that's like the overall issue, right? I'm talking about like micro plays about whether I should have trashed it or not, which is what determines these worlds. But I probably shouldn't be thinking about it in terms of that micro play, and should be thinking about it in terms of the world where I'd rather live in the 2 measured response and 8 credits and 4 cards world than not live in that world. And I can choose to live in that world by not trashing a card. It just means I have to accept that I'm not getting my Solidarity Badge value, which is fine. But just keep in mind, the Solidarity Badge is the thing that let me get error, which let me possibly win the next turn, right? And that's the other thing, right? Like, this world, it gives me more flexibility, and it probably makes me stronger temporarily, because I get to put things on Solidarity Badge. I get to, like, do things quickly, and doing things quickly is exciting for me, and allows me to apply pressure, which is the gameplay style that I'm used to when playing games. So, yeah, that was a lot of yapping, but I think I had a lot to think about this game, and it's also the first loss that I've had on these VOD reviews, so I think, like, it's not that there's more to review when there's a loss, because that's just not how gaming works, but there's a lot more excitement for me to review, because it means that I want to find the thing that I should have done. And I think I'm willing to accept, at least for now, maybe others will have different opinions, that I should not have trashed that measured response. But also with the acknowledgement that trashing it isn't even that bad of a decision. Like, it's actually like a fine decision, I think. I just circumstantially also drew a stolen agenda, and they circumstantially were able to draw extract, because hedge fund wasn't going to be enough there, right? So they had extract in hand. In fact, their hand involved an extract, which they must have drawn on the previous turn. Yeah. Okay, that's all. A lot of yapping, but what do you expect? See ya.